Slavery is a dark chapter in human history, present in nearly every major civilization. It crossed borders, cultures, and belief systems long before our modern world took shape. Today, when we talk about slavery, the conversation often centers on Europe and the Atlantic slave trade. But for centuries, slavery also existed across the Middle East, North Africa, and large parts of Asia, including regions governed by Muslim rulers. This video explores the complex historical relationship between Islam, Muslim-ruled societies, and the institution of slavery. We'll be drawing from academic research and historical records to understand this past. It is important to state up front: this is not a judgment on modern Muslims or the Islamic faith. Instead, it's an examination of how power, economics, and belief systems intersected over a vast period of time. Our goal is to learn from this history, not to assign blame. To start, we have to understand that slavery did not begin with Islam. Long before the 7th century, slavery was a deeply entrenched practice in Arabia, the powerful Byzantine and Persian empires, and across Africa, Europe, and Asia. People were enslaved for many reasons: as captives of war, to pay off debts, or simply because of their ethnicity or social status. It was a brutal reality of the ancient world. So, when Islam emerged, it entered a world where slavery was already a normalized, global institution. The new faith didn't invent this system. It inherited it as part of the social and economic fabric of the time. So, how did Islamic teachings address this pre-existing reality? The Quran and other Islamic texts did not abolish slavery outright. Instead, they recognized it as a social fact of the era and sought to regulate it. The teachings introduced rules that encouraged the humane treatment of enslaved people and strongly promoted the act of freeing them as a path to spiritual reward. Manumission, or freeing a slave, was framed as a deeply moral and charitable act, a way to atone for one's wrongdoings and demonstrate true ethical conduct. However, while emancipation was encouraged, slavery itself remained legally permissible under Islamic law. The economic and social structures of the time were heavily reliant on enslaved labor, and this reality persisted. As a result, despite the moral incentives to free slaves, Muslim societies continued to participate in and benefit from the institution of slavery for many centuries. This created a complex dynamic where the ideals of the faith coexisted with the harsh realities of a world built on profound inequality. From the 7th century onward, as Muslim-ruled empires expanded, they developed extensive and sophisticated slave systems. These were not small-scale operations. They were vast networks that spanned continents. Major slave trade routes crossed the Sahara Desert, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. In the Mediterranean, the Barbary corsairs also captured and enslaved people, adding another dimension to this complex web. The enslaved people came from a wide range of backgrounds. They were captured or purchased from sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, often referred to as the Sacalibos in Troasia, the Caucasus Mountains, and South Asia. This diversity shows that, for a long time, this form of slavery was not based on a single race or ethnicity. Enslaved people were forced into many different roles. They served as domestic servants in households, toiled as agricultural workers on large estates, and were trained as soldiers in elite military units. Some rose to powerful positions as administrators or court attendants within the government. Women in particular were often employed in domestic roles and within the lavish households of palaces, a practice that was common in empires all over the world during that period. This system was a fundamental part of the economic and social structure of these empires for over 1,000 years. Now, let's talk about the scale. It's incredibly difficult to get precise numbers, but historians have made estimates based on available records. Over more than a millennium, the slave trades connected to Muslim-ruled regions are estimated to have involved millions of people. For comparison, the Atlantic slave trade transported millions over a much shorter and more concentrated period of about 4 centuries. There were key differences between these systems. The various slave trades in the Islamic world lasted for a much longer time. The Atlantic system, on the other hand, was more industrialized, racially rigid, and centered on plantation agriculture in the Americas. However, we must never lose sight of the fact that both systems were built on violence and caused immense human suffering. No single civilization, culture, or religion holds a monopoly on this tragic history. Slavery was a global phenomenon, sustained by the demand and participation of many different societies around the world. It was a shared human failing. This brings us to the contradictions between ideals and reality. Although Islamic teachings emphasized the moral equality of all people before God, social hierarchies and prejudices still took root in practice. In certain regions and periods, people from sub-Saharan Africa were disproportionately enslaved, leading to the development of racial biases. While converting to Islam was supposed to offer a path to a more equal status, it did not always guarantee freedom, especially if powerful economic or political interests were at play. This gap between religious ideals and human behavior was not unique to Muslim societies. We see similar contradictions in almost every major empire throughout history, where the pursuit of power and profit often overshadowed moral or ethical principles. The desire for cheap labor, military strength, and social status frequently led rulers and elites to justify or ignore the brutal realities of the systems that enrich them. It's a recurring theme in the story of human power. So, how did slavery in the Muslim world come to an end? The decline was a gradual process that took place throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. It wasn't a single event, but a slow transformation driven by several factors. International pressure played a huge role. As global abolitionist movements gained strength, European colonial powers, often for their own strategic reasons, imposed treaties that banned the slave trade. Economic changes also made slavery less profitable in some areas, while the rise of new forms of labor replaced the old systems. Internally, a significant shift occurred as well. Muslim scholars and reformers began to reinterpret Islamic texts, arguing that the true spirit of the faith was incompatible with the institution of slavery in the modern world. They emphasized the religion's calls for justice and freedom, concluding that slavery was a practice of the past that had no place in a just society. This internal push for abolition was crucial in finally ending the practice in many countries. In conclusion, the history of slavery in the Islamic world is a long and complex one. It was historically significant, incredibly long-lasting, and deeply intertwined with the forces of empire and economics, but it was not unique. It was part of a global system that implicated societies all over the world. Understanding this history does not define Islam or its followers today. Instead, it allows us to confront uncomfortable truths about our shared past, not to point fingers, but to learn. Only through honest and open education can we truly understand the world we live in and work towards a more just future. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history.